And welcome back to Worst to Best. And this was actually requested. I forgot the name of the person. I'll put in the comments, the description, who actually suggested it. I did my best starters. Now, best legendary Pokemon. Now, should note real quickly. Hey, I'm gonna try to keep this video as short as possible, but this video will go off for a little while because there's over 35 legendary Pokemon minimum. Give or take, about 38 if I get my count right, hypothetically. Now, several things we need to note right now. Mythical Pokemon are different. They're not qualifying in this category. They're their own separate countdown. What do I define as a legendary Pokemon? Well, legendary Pokemon is any Pokemon that is basically first off, has a base total of 600 or more, and can be caught in the game. If you can catch it in the game, it's a legendary Pokemon. The only exception to that really is Deoxys, which only became catchable in the remake of Sapphire and Ruby. Should also note that the way I did this, a lot of my personal opinion comes into the equation, definitely. By the way, this image is from Bulbapedia, so I should be fine. But there you go, it's from Bulbapedia. A lot of my personal preference, obviously, is in this. But I did have to put into some consideration how well they actually fare in combat. So that got played as a factor. I grade it mostly on design, how well they do in combat. And I think what is actually most important is lore. How well does the legendary Pokemon actually represent a legendary Pokemon? Is it a main through line in the mythos of the region? Is it like a main player in the story and what it's capable of doing and things along those lines? So that's how I graded it. One last thing we should note is that a couple of these guys tied for certain spots. So some of them overtook others while others just kind of merged into one spot. When we get to the ones that merge into one spot, you'll know what I'm talking about. But let's get this party started. Now, as always, one last thing. When I do my best to worst videos, or worst to best, in this case it's worst to best, I never start with the worst, or if I do a best to worst, never start with the best, because I don't want to bury 50% in the lead. So what I do is I go from the second worst to all the way to the end, and then I say the actual worst and the actual best for last. So if you're just new, that's how I do it. And with about 2 minutes and 40 seconds, let's actually get into this. So my runner-up for the worst legendary Pokemon, in my opinion, is Heatran. I was actually talking to my coworker who's a big Pokemon player too, and I was bringing up Heatran came near just shy of the worst, and the reason for that actually isn't because Heatran's design is all that bad. Granted, if you told me this were, say, a Fire Steel Frog starter Pokemon, we had a Fire Frog that turned into a Fire Steel Frog, I'd believe this to be a final evolution and that'd actually be a pretty cool final evolution for a starter Pokemon, I think. But for a legendary, it's just kind of, okay, it's cool looking, that's fine. In terms of usefulness, it's a Fire Steel. It's terrible. It's horrible. It's still times 2 weak to water. It's times 4 weak to ground, for God's sake. It has no extra resistances or anything like that. The only thing it gets is an immunity to poison. That's the only benefit it has, which doesn't mitigate any weakness to that fire already had. But the thing that killed it for me so hard on the list was the fact that there's no point in this Pokemon being a legendary Pokemon. There's just no reason for it to be a legendary Pokemon at all. And because there's no lore about it. You just go and find it. That's all there is to it. There is nothing in story, even in the post-game story. There's nothing from a mythos standpoint which warrants this thing being a legendary Pokemon. So for me, Heatran just unfortunately fell flat. Another guy who fell flat, and unfortunately Gen 1 didn't fare very well on this list, is Zapdos. Now Zapdos to me is the weakest in terms of design of the legendary birds. Even Moltres, who looks a little off to me, still looks better than Zapdos. Zapdos, to me, it looks legendary. Don't get me wrong. Unlike, say, Heatran, most everything else on this list, even the bottom one, looks legendary. This one, though, it's just a spiky bird. It's a spiky bird with a really long beak. And a electric flying type is notoriously not a very good type combination. Yes, it does mitigate Electric's weakness to ground, sure. And it's actually, I believe, if I looked at this right, the most useful in battle of the three birds. But it had the weakest design, in my opinion. And unfortunately, it tied with the rest of the legendary birds for same problem you have with Heatran. You just go and you just find it. That's the problem. You just find it. There's nothing legendary in terms of lore. There's no lore on the legendary birds in Gen 1. Honestly, a lot of the early generations, a lot of the first two generations problems was, yeah, they had legendary Pokemon, but I don't think they quite understood what they wanted to do with legendary Pokemon. So Zapdos unfortunately suffered for that, and all the legendary birds unfortunately suffered in terms of combat because they are so weak to things like Rock Slide, Stealth Rock, Stone Edge, all that. Just, oh god, it's terrible. But coming in then at the number 34 spot is Moltres. And actually, I think I did have to change this up, so it's technically, I think this is like the 33rd spot, because I had to fuse some last night into one spot, is Moltres. So, while it's a slightly better design than, say, Zapdos's, it still suffers. In fact, it suffers actually a little bit worse than Zapdos does, because it has an extra weakness, weakness to water. Zapdos at least doesn't have a weakness to water. Unfortunately, a fire flying, even though the flying helps a little, doesn't save it when it comes to water weaknesses. And Zapdos, it's a decently, see, that I at least look and say, okay, that's a legendary Pokemon. We ended up getting a better Phoenix-esque Pokemon in Ho-Oh, who is obviously farther down on the list, higher up on the list, I guess you could say. But it's still a decent design Pokemon. It's just nothing special. And by the way, I'm not including anything we see in the anime from these guys, because that's just the anime. There's nothing really amazing about the anime in terms of how it represents the games. We're talking about the games here. So, I mean, not much else to say on Moltres. It is basically my number 33. Coming in at number 32, we have not a legendary bird. We have Cresselia. Now, Cresselia, and I'm just going to, and I'll probably be fixing this along the way. There we go. Cresselia, technically speaking, I could see more of an explanation of Cresselia being a mythical than a legendary, because it's the counterpart to, it's a counterpart to Darkrai. I don't understand why this one's legendary and catchable, whereas Darkrai is mythical and you have to get it through an event. I don't get why that's the case. If you wanted to give me the option, give me Darkrai as the legendary, and this thing give me the mythical. Because as it stands, it's one of those roaming mythicals that I just don't care about trying to catch. Now, that being said, it's still a cool-looking Pokemon. Like, this is a very unique-looking Pokemon. I like this design quite a bit. Because I think it's supposed to be like a swan, except with moons, obviously, a bird as kind of beak, a nose, and fins that are just these crescents, if you will. And it's psychic, so it floats, so it doesn't have any problems with mobility. But ultimately, my problem comes down to, again, it's a little bit better than the other. Here's one thing. It's a little bit better than the other ones on lore, only because you have to go get one of its feathers and give it to Cure a Void. That's all you do. But it's still a little bit better on lore than the other guys, because you at least have to go and find it for a specific reason. The problem is, it's just a random legendary, and it's psychic. There's nothing special about the typing. Its power is whatever, but it's just not amazing. It's okay. Should note that apart from the legend of my bottom pick, there's nothing truly. I have nothing truly against any of these like designs or any of them personally. It's just how I ordered them or ranked them. So then, coming in at my number 31 is the final legendary bird, Articuno. Now, the reason Articuno made it just a bit higher on the list than all the other ones is because, quite frankly, it's the best designed bird. Of the three, if you prefer the other two, one of the other two, that's perfectly fine. That's your opinion. That's your choice. And no judgment on that. But to me, Articuno is clearly the best design. It's the sleekest designed. That's the thing. It just looks nicer. I mean, this picture might not be doing quite the justice because it's one of those poses. It's just the picture I chose. But when you see it, and I'll even use the anime for example here a little bit. When you see it in the anime, it looks the most majestic of the three. And I've always liked ice. Ice is, I think, the most offensive of the three typings between electric, water, and fire, weirdly enough. Water and fire. Electric, fire, and ice. Which is weird when you think about it. But I think it's actually the most useful offensively. It's just such a glass cannon typing. Even fire has some better defensive typings than ice. Or defensive Pokemon than ice. And electric definitely does. But ice's problem is, in terms of, concept, both fire and electric are elements that have no form. Whereas ice has a solid, brittle form. Now you can make solid ice that's hard to break through, but it's brittle usually. Hence why it's a very weak type defensively. And hence why this thing also gets murdered in any sort of fight. Unfortunately, it's also, despite the fact that Zapdos and Moltres are more useful in a fight compared to Articuno is the most useless in a fight compared to, Articuno's got the better design. So it won out point-wise because it had a better design as opposed to the other ones who worked a little bit better on the battlefield. But that's what it is. Coming in at number 30 spot, we have Regirock. Regirock, and yeah, you'll note all the Regis actually were individually ranked here, just like the birds. I will admit there are three trios that were lumped together, but I'll explain that when I get to them. Regirock, though, for all the Regis, between Regi Ice, Rock, Steel, Gigas, can't rank the new ones because they haven't been released yet. Regirock to me just seems like the most, combat-wise, they're all pretty useless. They're all slow as F. They have one or two unique moves between all of them. Because of typing. With the exception of Gigas, who is obviously the trio master. But in terms of all, I get it, they're man-made golems. From a lore standpoint, they are at least a little bit better than, say, some of your other random or standard legendary Pokemon. Because they're man-made golems, but there's nothing else that really comes off from that. Yeah, you got to get them to get Regigigas, so that's one thing. You got to solve the puzzles, which is another thing, which is cool. I can dig that. Design-wise, though, this is where they all kind of suffer. They're just kind of blah. They got these dotty eyes. They got a humanoid form. They don't even have hands most of the time. I mean, even Ice and Steel, who obviously rank higher than this guy, have some level of fingers. This guy's just a rock. He's literally just a pile of rocks. Not as bad as Stonjourner Miner, but still, pile of rocks. So, for me, he was number 31, or number 30. Coming out at 29, we got, actually, I should take it back. There's 4 trios that rank. I completely forgot about these ones for a specific reason. I got the Swords of Justice trio. I believe it's called. I'm not even going to bother trying to say the name of the trio's actual members, because, nah. They ranked higher, from a competitive standpoint, they're a lot more useful than a couple of these other guys, because they're all fighting variants. Grass fighting, which, if you've ever fought with a Breloom, you know that can be a useful typing. Water fighting, if you ever use a Poliwrath, you know that can be a useful typing. And then rock fighting, which is just unique, actually, in my mind. The fact that it's a rock, I believe that's, which one is that? The one that begins with T, whose name I can't remember. Tetriac, or something like that. But the fact that he's a rock fighting type gets rid of Rock's weakness to fighting because he's already a fighter. So it neutralizes a bit of the fighting aspect there. Or the fighting weakness, to a degree. And unfortunately, it doesn't get rid of the water. It doesn't get rid of the grass. It doesn't get rid of the ground. So, still, it's not bad. And a couple, and him, the middle one particularly, I like it. It looks kind of like a bulldog. I do like a bulldog ram almost. But that's the problem, is I don't quite get what these are supposed to be. I get the deer aspect of them a little bit, and he's apparently like a goat or like a bighorn sheep or a ram, but I don't quite get that. And worst of all, especially because even with my, I'll even say this, even with my worst pick, they at least have a presence within the lore of their game. These are, again, just Moltres. These are, again, just of Heatran, you just go out and find them. There's no lore. Maybe once in a while there's a mention of something, but there's just no lore on these guys. And design-wise, I'll be honest, besides the middle one, I don't dig on these designs very much. I really don't. Gen 5 is notorious for having a lot of designs people didn't like, and among the legendaries, these are definitely in my lower tier. Not my lowest, obviously, but lower tier. Coming in at 28, we got Regice. Now, Regice I like definitely a bit more than Regirock. He's more angular. He looks a bit more dangerous. I also like the ice type just better than the rock type, frankly. I like his pattern too for his eyes. Like, he's just a better designed Reggie than Regirock. The problem with Regice though is, again, competitively, he's just not very good. And frankly, besides his design being a little better, it's not like he's my favorite. He's hardly a perfect design Pokemon. He's just, again, an ice golem. And from a lore perspective, how do you make an ice golem that doesn't, like, how does he not melt? That's like magic crap right there. How does a Pokemon that's literally made of ice, sentient ice, not melt? And I don't quite get, like, other ice Pokemon aren't made of ice. They just have ice-like traits. Most ice Pokemon actually aren't made of ice. Most. Some are technically made of, like, you can make the argument the Vanillite line, or Vanillix line. Cryologen, I can't remember, I know I'm butchering that name. They're technically made of ice, but still, I like it better than Regirock. I like it better than the other guys, and he's a better. He also in battle. While he's not great, he's not good even. He's better in battle than say Regirock is. Because what is Regirock capable of taking out? He's capable of taking out flying types, right? I believe. Now that I'm saying out loud, I think Bug is weak to Rock. I'm not remembering that quite off the top of my head. Whereas ice types can take out ground, can take out grass, can take out dragon. I believe flying is also not good against ice. So he's got a lot more coverage on his part than Regirock does. So coming in at the number 20, I believe 7 now? 27 is the Trio Master Reggie, which now shows you which Reggie I actually think is the best. Is Regigigas. Now, Regigigas, lore-wise, is much better than, say, some of the other guys, because he is the Trio Master. But on the same side, the other side of that coin, lore-wise, again, there's a temple dedicated to him. Great. Unfortunately, he's just kind of still there. You got to go find him. Now, you do have to go through some hoops to get him, which does help a little bit in terms of like a lore perspective. But the problem with any of these extra legendary Pokemon is, and by the way, I should note, I forgot to bring this up, there are no Ultra Beasts on this, save for maybe one. Or technically two, because Solgaleo and Lunat are technically Ultra Beasts. But there are no Ultra Beasts, because that's a video in its own right, and they're technically all legendary. The problem with all post-game legendaries that aren't like the main cover legendaries is that you're now trying to cram more story into this game. And sometimes you don't want to do it. Sometimes you just got to go through a maze and find this guy. So unfortunately, it's not really all that great. Now I will say he's got probably the best design of any other Reggies, even Registeel, who clearly ranks higher than him on this list. He does have that going for him. I like the multicolored eyes that are clearly his eyes. The fact that he's actually covered in, he's an organic Reggie. He's covered in both whatever these are. And by the way, I guess these aren't his eyes. Sorry, these represent the trio. But his eyes are right here. You can't see my mouse address. I forgot. The dots represent the three Reggies. His eyes are those dots. But still, he's got the yellow pads. I don't know exactly what it's called. Guards. And also where his face kind of is. He's got the grass growing on him, or the plant life growing on him. I dig his design the most of the four. Soon to be 6. That said, he's also arguably the worst one to use in battle because of that damn slow start. Like, his power is immense. And if you could somehow get a Regigigas that doesn't have the slow start ability, then that's great, because I do believe they can have another ability. But unfortunately, that slow start will murder you in combat, because he just can't hit fast. No matter if unless you give him like a quick claw and hope to God he can hit fast or hit first. I don't hate Regigigas, I really don't, but he's just my number 27. So coming in now at the number 26 spot is the Eon duo, Latias and Latias. Now, the Eon duo is interesting to me because they're not poorly designed. In fact, when I ranked it, I'm like, okay, where do these guys rank? And because I do it like out of 1 out of 5, or rank them and added up the score, and they rank the same. So I'm like, okay, plop them together. And it makes sense. They're a little different. If you were to actually ask me which one I kind of prefer design-wise over the other, I might lean towards Latios, because he's clearly the more seriously designed. He's about, at least in the movie anyway, he was the older sibling. He was less child. He's more serious. And I like blue over red. But frankly, they're pretty much the same Pokemon, just slightly different colors, designs. I think Latias is actually a little bit bigger than Latias. Their Megas are okay. I was even surprised they even had Megas, or that they got Megas, and they, again, ironically, both look the exact same. I think there might be like a subtle difference, but I don't know for sure what that difference is. But I mean, they're decent looking Pokemon. Like I look at these and I say, okay, these are legendary Pokemon. These are Pokemon that you can't just catch in the wild. But I mean, they're psychic dragons, which is cool. They're just sort of, I don't know. I look at them and I'm like, these are nice. There are far better legendary Pokemon design-wise, lore-wise. That's another problem, quite frankly, is that in-game, they're another Pokemon that just exists. Now, luckily, Ruby and Sapphire, or Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, helped out a little bit with that. But they still just kind of exist. Especially in the original games. Like, I remember coming across one as I just came out and caught Rayquaza. And I was just playing it, and all of a sudden I encountered something like, oh god, another freaking Tentacruel. Or Tentacool. And then there stood, I think it was Latios from my game. I had Ruby, so I believe it was Latios. I think they did that on purpose, where Sapphire, because it's blue, you got the red one. Ruby, because it's red, you get the blue one. But ultimately, yeah, I think they're okay. That's it. Their lore is pretty much non-existent, again, unless you go into the movies. Or unless you at least try and... Ruby and Sapphire, Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby tried a little bit, but they really didn't do anything except give you a free legendary Pokemon. So, yeah. That is a little bit of the problem I have with the Gen 6 games. That includes X and Y and Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, is that they made things a little too convenient, a little too easy for you. Coming in, though, at the number 20, I believe I'm at number 26 now? Is that right? No, I'm at 25. 25 is the final Reggie on the list, Registeel. Now, Registeel, why does Registeel rank higher than maybe Regigigas or Regice or even Regirock? Well, for me, it comes down to a couple things. One, I think he's got the sleekest design of any of the other ones there. I mean, he's on par, I think, with Regice. I think he is. Because unlike, say, Regirock or Regice, first off, he looks like an artificial Pokemon. He's made of steel, so he's clearly an artificial Pokemon. But I can at least get behind how humans could have made this artificial Pokemon, because it's metal, because he's a Pokemon made of steel. Also, being a steel type gives him an advantage, a supreme advantage over the other three, because apart from the fact that Regigigas does have an immunity to Ghost, anyone with a fighting type could take this guy out too. But he's got an immunity to Poison. I will take an immunity over Poison over an immunity over Ghost 9 times out of 10, because a Ghost type, yeah, it'll hit me, it'll hurt, whatever, as long as I'm trained my Pokemon, fine. A Poison type, I could hit a Poison type with Poison Point, and no matter if I kill or not, I can still get Poison, and that sucks. Except for the Salandit and a Salazzle. That's not happening with Registeel. He's immune to poison, which immediately boosts him up in terms of a meta. So for me, Registeel automatically came out on top in terms of everything put together from a design to a lore perspective, everything along those lines. Now, granted, we're not even into the upper half of the list yet, so hold on to your butts, so to speak. This next one, you have to pardon the. I'm going to be altering the picture in just a second. The next one's on the list, coming in at the, and this is where I kind of merged it together. I believe this went to the entire trio of the weather trio of the Djinns. Now the Djinns and Tornadus, Thundurus, Landorus. At first, I kind of had them ranked differently with each other, but like all three of them were actually at different separate rankings, but they were so close together. I quickly realized that there was no point, even though they did have different rankings. This is where I cheat a little bit here. They ultimately are just decent. Like, I like them. I like that. They are Djinns coming out of clouds. They're all flying. I do like this concept. I do like the idea. And their alternate forms are cool. But ultimately, what kind of killed it for me, what really killed it long term, is the fact that while they got decent designs, again, they're actually also not bad in a fight. I mean, yeah, I get electric flying when it comes to Thundurus. Ground flying, which is only shared by Gliscor, and I think, Gligar, and I think Gliscor are the only ones that share that typing as well with flying ground. Flying ground is unique because it completely gets rid of the electric weakness flying has, which then completely changes up how you fight with that guy, which I really dig on. And then just pure flying, which I don't think we have any other pure. I think he's the only pure flying type Pokemon, which is very unique in my mind. So they're all actually really useful in combat. It's just that, again, lore-wise, they suck. There is no lore. There's nothing. I take it back. There's a minor lore where you go to like a certain area, they briefly talk about these guys, and then you go find them. You can catch one of them. I can't remember which one you can naturally catch, but then the other two are roaming. It's like, I hate the roaming ones. I always hated roaming Pokemon because we want to fight these guys. We don't want to just fight these guys and try to catch them. We don't want to have to chase them, go into a battle, hit them. If we don't have an ability like Mean Look or something that'll keep them in the battle, then have to chase them around again. No, that's dumb. So, yeah, unfortunately for the 20... Where did I have it at? 24th spot, I think it was? I'm going to stop saying numbers at this point. I'll get back to numbers when it's all said and done. 24th spot, I think that's... I think I had to go for these guys. Coming in at the next spot, who fortunately ranked a little higher, is Zygarde. Zygarde did rank the lowest of the trio from Kalos. That's another problem with Cal. I like Kalos and I like Gen 6 and X and Y, but that was not a trio. Zygarde, to me, had so much potential. I only have the original design up here because this design I like the most, quite frankly. This snake-like dragon Pokemon, this frill on his back. He looks like he's made up of multiple Pokemon, which he actually is. So I liked this design. I dug on this. I did like it a lot. It was cool when I caught it. At the same time, though, he's just another guy in the X and Y games who's sitting in a freaking cave doing nothing. He's not even mentioned in the lore. People have brought that up multiple times. Whereas Xerneas and Zygarde, or Xerneas and Yveltal, who are obviously higher on the list, are much more integral to the story. Zygarde's just there. He's supposed to be the balance between the two of them, and he's not doing a damn thing. And then you try to splice him in the Sun and Moon. Like, I get it. You did this. Why didn't you do this and make it a part? Why wasn't there Pokemon Z? That's the big thing. Why you had X and Y, which are actually supposed to represent technically life and death, or I believe they were supposed to represent the X and Y axis, but also X and Y for chromosomes as well, so life. But why didn't you make Pokemon Z and then do all the forms of Zygarde and make him more important to the plot. Instead of just having a Zygarde in Sun and Moon. This, unfortunately, little fact, killed Zygarde when it came to his actual placing on the list, because lore-wise, there's just nothing. Even in Sun and Moon, there's nothing. Whereas in the actual, what we know about Zygarde, he actually has a very integral part in the Pokemon universe. He's essentially a Captain Planet-esque figure. But he just nothing. Like, he protects the planet, he protects the ecosystem, but no, just nothing. And as a Dragon Ground type, unfortunately, he can throw right into the deal. Against Fairies, he's screwed. Against Iced, oh, he's effed. So, he's unfortunately pretty easy to beat, too. Even if you go into his Power Ranger Battlezord mode. Anyway, I've ranted on about that. Now, someone who plays a little higher, I'm less angry about Solgaleo. Now, when I got Pokemon Moon, Obviously, I rank Lunala a little bit higher from the design, because when I get a game, obviously the first aesthetic I go for isn't necessarily the game mechanic or anything like that, because in terms of playthrough, they're both going to be relatively similar to each other. And so that's not what's important to me. What's important to me is my mascot cooler than your mascot? At least that's how it always was when my sister and I were trying to get games. Is my mascot cooler than your design-wise? What's going on with that? Because we very rarely actually play with the legendary Pokemon we get these days. Very rarely is that the case. Sometimes that will happen. Like, I'll admit, I still have Zamazenta on my team in X and Y, or in Sword. So, yeah, I mean, it happens. You play with them, sure, because they're actually really good Pokemon. But with Solgaleo and Lunala, I was like, I like Lunala better. That said, Solgaleo is still cool looking. I mean, it looks like a Zoid. What was that? Not a Zoid. Was that it? Basically, he looks like a Zord. He does look like he belongs in, say, like a Transformers type show. I do like he's a psychic a steel lion, which is interesting. And it's tied back to alchemy. I know that. And what is also really cool about him is that unlike, say, a lot of the guys on this list, him and Lunala are both equally tied a bit more to the lore of the Alola region, because they are in fact Ultra Beasts. They are Ultra Beasts. Same with Necrozma, but I'll admit Necrozma is also on this list. These guys are the 3 Ultra Beast exceptions I made, because they are integral parts of the game. And they are like the main mascot legendary you're fighting. But these guys are, and particularly Solgaleo, are just interesting in concept. I like the idea of a legendary Pokemon that actually evolves. I do like the idea about that. Unfortunately, I don't think it was utilized properly, because you have Cosmog, who can do jack shit, and then you have, I can't remember the name of the middle one, who's basically, he's supposed to be a collapsed star is what he is. And that's why he's as heavy as he is. But again, doesn't do anything. So to even get one of these guys naturally is really irritating to do, because you have to evolve something that can't battle. And I get you have experience shares and stuff like that, but the experience share will only go so far with these guys. It's just, I like his design. I like what they tried to go for. A Psychic Steel type is a very useful type in combat. Should know that Psychic Steel is no joke in combat. Because again, an immunity to poison types, Psychic typing gives it an edge over fighting and flying. And Ghost, it's equal to Ghost. They fixed that. The Steel typing gives it a huge bonus over, again, Poison, Fairy. Unfortunately, it still gets beaten out by Fire and Dark and all that. So, still, I like it, but to be fair, I like Lunala better. See, to me, Lunala was just a cooler design. I like the lion, but this bat vampire moon looking thing is just much cooler. I like you can see the veins, like these, they're not veins per se, but I like that you can see these, the webbing of his wings. I like that he's pretty much just rounds, his wings are these, almost like blades really. When you look at these wings, you could see these being used in combat, theoretically speaking. Lunala to me was just a better designed Pokemon compared to compared to Solgaleo. Not by a lot, by a better designed Pokemon. Unfortunately, he did come up short somewhere, and that's his typing. Because Solgaleo's typing is actually more useful in combat than Lunala's is. Because Lunala is a Ghost Psychic versus a Steel Psychic. Now, whereas Steel Psychic will give you an immediate immunity to Poison types, Ghost will give you an immediate immunity to normal types. Unfortunately, it also gives you a ×4 weakness to Dark. So, it immediately put Lunala a bit lower on the list in terms of combat, but ultimately, because I liked its design a bit more, it aided it a bit better in the ultimate long run of things, in terms of ranking. Coming in now, at the next number spot, we have the Tapu line. Now, the Tapu line, to me, and I believe we're almost like evened out now in terms of in terms of the list. So in terms of where I had to make some adjustments. So we're actually so they rank at number 20. The number 20 mark goes to the Tapu line. Now I couldn't really rank any of them separately, and the reason I couldn't do that is A, that would have made the list a lot longer, but B, they're just mirror images of each other. Because, I mean, yes, they're all fairy types, but they all have a different subtype. But really, that wouldn't change things that much. They're all useful in their own way. Personally, in terms of straight-on combat, obviously Tapu Koko is probably the most useful. And I'll say, design-wise, he's probably the most badass looking with the mohawk and everything like that. I will say Tapu Bulo is probably my second favorite. I do like the bull hiding in there aspect. I do think that's kind of cool. Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking at where things are ranked at the moment. I do think I think that is a kind of cool aspect. But yeah, they are just sort of there. They don't add a huge amount to the overall game. They are integral for lore to some degree, because we actually see Tapu Koko coming to fight in Ultra Beast, which was pretty badass. But they're ultimately just, they're ultimately okay. They're ultimately okay. I would have preferred just a straight trio, but I think it's cool what they did. Coming in at the number, what is this? Number 19 spot is the three beasts. Now, these guys, again, they all rank together. They are one of the OG trios. And that shows. People still love these guys. Now, I was having a conversation with my coworker about this. He likes Entei. He likes Suicune the best. He thinks Suicune is the coolest. I personally was always a fan of Entei. Now, that probably came from a bit of the third movie coming into bias there. But Entei, I just like this lion. They're all technically dogs. But I like the fact that Entei is a bit more like a lion mastiff. Raikou is this tiger-esque saber-toothed dog. Suicune's the only one to me who actually looks like a dog. So, I mean, I like it. They are actually mentioned in lore. Like, we actually do have a moment with them in the Burnt Tower at Ecruteak City. So I think that is very important. But, that said, yeah, they're not the best in terms of combat. They're just monotypes, which means at least they don't have quadruple weakness. That is an important thing that should be noted. That said, they're still not the best to use, but I love them for, if nothing else, nostalgia purposes. Coming in next is one that people are going to hate on me for a little bit, is Mewtwo. He only ranked at number 18. Now, why did he only rank at number 18? Well, there's a very specific reason for that. Now, from a design standpoint, I always liked Mewtwo. It's very cool, very Mewtwo-esque, very Frieza-esque. He looks imposing. I mean, yeah, again, going to the movie, he was badass in the movie. Granted, he's a bit of a freaking hypocrite, but he's the badass in the movie. And power-wise, no one can argue how strong using a Mewtwo is. No one can argue that. It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, he is a badass. He is completely capable of wrecking most Pokemon. Yeah, we've now we've now introduced typings that can match him or are completely immune to his bullshit, but he also learns Aura Sphere to counteract dark types. So there you go. So why, if I'm ranting and raving and praising about Mewtwo so much, does he rank as low as he does? He's only number 18 on my list. It's not even in the upper half, which we are getting to now, as a matter of fact. Well, the problem is, and unfortunately this is again due to the fact that Gen 1 to Gen 2 didn't really know how to frame legendaries right, I think. Didn't know what to really do from a story perspective with legendaries. There's nothing about, there's a brief notebook in Cinnabar Island's labs about it. That is it. He is just another Pokemon you go and find in a cave. This is Mewtwo, the original. But no, he wasn't a box legendary, but hypothetically he would have been the box legendary. The original legendary, the OG legendary. And you just wander in a cave and find him. You also just wander in a cave and find him in X and Y. Why? Just why? I don't get it. I don't get it. Why is he just randomly sitting around in X and Y? Just like, oh, I'm here. Oh, someone to catch me again. I remember when that red guy caught me. Damn! So, yeah, I don't get it. Unfortunately, Mewtwo is just, he just got killed when it came to the actual, the whole actual lore of Pokemon. When it came to the legendary aspect, he pretty much fails on that. Someone who doesn't fail on that, surprisingly, though, is Ho-Oh, who comes in at number 17 spot. And now we're in the upper half. These are the Pokemon that I'm actually a lot more fond of, and I'll try to go a little quicker because we're already at the 41-minute mark. Ho-Oh, now first up, it's a different design of a Phoenix, but he's still designed after a Phoenix. And you look at that and you say, that is a legendary Pokemon. Some of these other ones, like I said, you look at it and you don't immediately see a legendary Pokemon. You look at Ho-Oh and you see a legendary Pokemon. He's also integral a bit to the lore because he's the one who resurrected the trio. He's the one that brought life to Entei, Suicune, and Raikou. The problem with Ho-Oh, unfortunately, and it's not so much a problem as that it's just the way that they came out, is that he's got the same problem that Moltres does, or Charizard does. He's not that good in combat. Any rock-type move will obliterate his ass. And again, to be fair, leveled up to the proper level to obliterate his ass, but still. Unfortunately, Fire or Flying is just not a good type combination. And as much as I love him from a design standpoint, he just kind of doesn't stack up well. Still, I really like his design. I love seeing him in the anime and the movies. He does have a solid role for the lore of his region. So for that, I'm saying they're genderless technically, but I'm saying he. So for that, Ho-Oh comes in at my number 17, was it? Yep, 17. Coming in number 16, we have the most recent entry, Zacian. Now, obviously, I got Shield, so I preferred Zamazenta. And I will say this, Zacian has grown on me as time has gone on, particularly both him and Zamazenta. I will fully say this. I actually think they look better without the rusted shield or the sword. I think their forms before they grab these are just better. But one's a fairy fighting, one's a fairy steel. He's the fairy fighting type. And it showed. He's got literally the highest attack, I think, of any Pokemon, save a Mega Evolved Mewtwo. He's nuts. Both these guys are actually legitimately useful in combat, which is rare for legendary Pokemon now. That you can actually get legitimate use. But Lorebot, they're the hero Pokemon that saved the Galar region. It's actually the mystery of these Pokemon is actually a big part of the mythos of Galar, which is important. If you're going to be a legendary Pokemon, you actually need to be a part of the of the region's culture, of their history. That's why you're legendary. And Zacian and Zamazenta both did that. Now, from a combat standpoint, though, a fairy fighting type is actually a bit more useful, I will say, than, say, a fairy steel type, because he's just more offensive. And trust me, I've gone up against the son of a bitch. He's not easy to take down. Even with your Zamazenta. if you're fighting him with Zamazenta, he's not easy to take down. You need to level up something fierce. Fortunately, they make leveling up pretty easy thanks to all the rare candies. But still, Zacian, man. Zacian's no joke. I liked Zacian. Again, I actually like his hero. I don't think this is his hero mini battles form. I think that's... I can't remember which one's the hero mini battles form. I actually liked his non-augmented form better. It was just a sleeker design. To me, there's too much going on here, quite frankly. Like, I don't get these quite get these wing things. Yeah, he's holding a sword, but you could have just put a sword on his head or something. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't quite get why he just has to hold a sword. Anyone could hypothetically hold the damn sword. Anyway. By the way, speaking of it, anyone could hold the damn shield. No, that's not quite the same. Zamazenta comes in at my number 15 spot? 15 spot. Yeah, we're in the final 15 now. And I like this design a little bit. It's a sleeker looking design. I mean, I prefer, honestly, their non-augmented forms. But if you were to ask me which you prefer, there's a reason I got Shield. I just felt this was a sleeker way to go about doing a shield. So instead of just putting a sword in the damn thing's mouth, or a shield in the damn thing's mouth, I was like, I'm holding onto my shield. No, the shield, he's wearing the shield like armor. That is cool. That makes sense. And I actually like it. It almost gives him almost a lion appearance, which I liked. I dig on Zamazenta's design a bit more than I do on Zacian's design. And fortunately for Zamazenta, that did ultimately help it out a little bit. They actually tied in terms of their score, but because I went with Zamazenta over Zacian, it allowed me to rank it a bit higher. So in terms of just pure design, and again, lore-wise, the exact same thing with Zacian. So for me, I had to rank Zamazenta a little up higher. At 14, we got Palkia. Now, obviously, Dialga ranks higher. I went with Diamond when I first got the Gen 4 games. And, yeah, I like Dialga a bit better, but that's not to take away from Palkia. Palkia, I think, is actually a pretty cool-looking Pokemon. I mean, it's a Dragon Water type, which is by no means a useless type combination. You ever go up against a Kingdra, and this is a legendary Pokemon with stats that far outrank a Kingdra. So he's got a decent, solid typing. I immediately see, not extra dimensional, but I definitely see legendary. Like, he's got the pearl in his shoulders. He looks cosmic. I think that's the best way to put, which should have been, maybe we'll get that next gen, Pokemon Cosmic, or in Pokemon Galactic. Or actually, you know what? I can very well see that being the names of the Diamond and Pearl remix. Cosmic Pearl, Galactic Diamond, or something like that. Even though Galactic was the team's name, so they probably wouldn't go with that. Still. Palkia, to me, along with Dialga, and I like Dialga a bit better, but it represents represents what you're supposed to do with a legendary Pokemon. When you design, in my opinion, a legendary Pokemon, you need to be making sure that you have, A, good design, and B, a reason for it to be legendary. You need to have it tied with your mythos. You need to have an integral part of the story. Dialga and Palkia both do that, and they both do that extremely well. They are the MacGuffin. The bad guys are literally trying to get these Pokemon so they can destroy the world and remake it in their image. That is legendary. That's the whole point behind a legendary, is that they're supposed to be a MacGuffin Pokemon. They're supposed to be the thing everyone's supposed to want. Not just be lying around in random places for some reason or another. Now, I don't like... now, unfortunately for Palkia, the reason it didn't rank quite as high as Dialga is mostly because they actually ranked the same, but I got Dialga. I got Pearl Diamond when I first got these games. So, Dialga ranked a bit higher. I don't know. For some reason, to me, this guy just looked a bit cooler. He's a four-legged dragon. I like that aspect. I like that he's a dragon steel type, which, again, talking about type means you don't want to F with. A Dragon Steel type mitigates part of the his Dragon type moves aren't going to do anything against the Fairy type, but it mitigates part of the weakness to Fairy to a certain degree, gives you an immunity to poison. And then, for offensive purposes, it's severely offensive typing. Steel and Dragon are some of the most offensive moves you can have. And the Roar of Time, while Spatial Rend is great, and I love the idea of just rending space, Roar of Time is basically, he gets 2 different versions of Hyper Beam. He can learn Hyper Beam, for God's sake. So, for me, Dialga just ranked a little higher, if nothing else from a design standpoint and from a typing. Then coming in at our 9, and we're starting to get now into the big boys now. We're starting to get into the top 12. We're almost there. Coming in at the number 12 spot is Eternatus. Now, again, Eternatus is relatively new. And if I'm going to be honest, he looks like he should be an Ultra Beast. But he's not. He's a legendary Pokemon, and that's fine. He came to Earth apparently 20,000 years ago. A Dragon Poison type, which is a unique typing. We can only see that on Skrelp's evolution, whose name I'm forgetting right now. That's the only time we see that combination. And the Eternamax version of him is bad. I wish we could access that, but we can't. Is badass as hell. He looks alien. He looks unique. He looks dangerous. And I like the fact he's just got a cannon built into his body. What unfortunate is, and the lore of Galar is literally created from Eternatus. So, if anything, I probably should have ranked him a little bit higher. Really, I think that what kills it for me, frankly, is his design. While it's a cool design, it's too... We literally just had Ultra Beasts from Sun and Moon, the previous gen. This, to me, just looks like more of an Ultra Beast than an actual Pokemon. So, unfortunately, it's suffered because of that. Coming in now, and this broke my heart. This is one of my favorites. It broke my heart. But I had to be at least somewhat objective when it came to things like usefulness and lore and all that stuff. Lugia, man. I love Lugia. To me, Lugia was one of the few Pokemon on this list that got a 5 out of 5 for design. This thing was always the coolest look. And let's not even talk about Shadow Lugia. This thing was always the coolest looking Pokemon. He's got these hand wings that can fly or grab you with. He's got these fins that can be tucked back for combat. He's got this badass, almost mask on his head that just juts out. He's a psychic flying type. He was just badass in the movie. I just loved Lugia. But unfortunately, lore-wise, there's almost nothing. Ho-Oh has better lore, honestly, because he resurrected the trio. Yeah, he's the guardian of the ocean, and that's made more that's made more specific in the movie. But we're not talking about the movie. I had to not go with the movie lore, which really kicked him in the teeth. And psychic flying. Now, defensively, this guy's actually a tank defensively. If you ever fought with a Lugia is a tank defensively. But he's... Oh, man, it sucked as a psychic flying type. Now we have dark types, and a lot of dark types, and some legendary dark types, and mythical dark types. Lugia can't handle that. He's got the one move that's unique to him, Aurora Aeroblast. I think that's what it's called, which is cool. Great. I wish he just did. Oh, man, it really sucks. It really sucks. I would love for them to revisit Lugia, since they're giving the legendary birds Galar farms, maybe in the next gen 9, connected somehow to Johto in some way. Give Lugia a whatever form. Just give Lugia some love again, man. Lugia was always the best. And Lugia will always be one of my favorites. But still, he only ranked number 11. Now we're in the top 10. Number 10 is Kyurem. Now, why does Kyurem rank at number 10? That is a legitimately good question. Well, when I broke down this list, again, I factored it in based on A, design, B, lore, and C, how useful they are in combat. Because he's a dragon ice type, the only weakness he has, legit, is fairies. Because, yes, dragons are weak to dragons, but ice is strong against dragons, which already doesn't neutralize, but weakens any dragon attack that's going to hit a Kyurem. And we're not going into their merged forms with Kyogre. Sorry, I'm looking down on the list because Kyogre hasn't come up yet, and I'll eventually get to him. With Zekrom and Reshiram. Yeah, but we're not talking about because they're basically a fusion of two Pokemon is what they are. So that can't count in here. But without taking that out of the equation, the only thing that can hit this guy and hit it hard enough to do anything is a fairy type move. So just from a combat perspective, Kyurem is actually extremely viable in a fight because he only has one legitimate weakness. The dragon helps curve the fire weakness and completely mitigates any fighting and rock weaknesses. And then you factor in the actual design. Now, the design, I will admit for Kyurem, the design isn't the best of the three. Zekrom and Reshiram, who were obviously higher on this list, they ranked a little higher in terms of design. Actually, they ranked about equal, but the designs, quite frankly, if you were to tell me to compare, they're a bit better than, say, Kyurem's design. But Kyurem actually has what really hurt him, not actually hurt him, but really helped him. I'm getting my terminology a little mixed up here. Is that lore-wise, he's nothing special in the black and white games. He's, again, just there. But what does help him out is the fact that he did get his own games. Now, you can make an argument saying that, yeah, but he only got his own games because we were able to fuse the other two with him. And that's fair. You were only able to fuse the other two with him, and that's why he kind of got his own games. You were able to make Kyurem white and Kyurem black. I get it. Cool. But the fact is, he's hypothetically he's a missing piece of the trio. So, I don't know. Maybe, in the hindsight, I probably should have ranked him a bit lower on the lore. But as it stands, because he actually had a game devoted to him, even though it's not the form we're looking at here, I had to rank him as high as I did, I think. And you can even tell. You can look at him, like looking at his tail, you can see where Zekrom and Reshiram may have been a part of. He may have been a part of all three of them. Like, they may have been one actual dragon at one point, which maybe in a future remake we'll see that. Coming in now, in our number 9 spot is Zekrom himself. Now, Zekrom ranks a little bit higher. In fact, Zekrom and Reshiram and Kyurem all ranked about the same in terms of design, but these guys ranked 100% on the lore because, again, they are representations of of truth and ideology. I believe he is the truth and Reshiram is the ideology. I could be mistaken on that. But they're yin and yang, and they are, again, they're the big focal points lore-wise of the black and white games. You get the orb. It turns out the orb is that Pokemon. And they have to go, and they end up duking it out with their respective Pokemon. There is literally scenes of these guys coming out and being released and, standing tall and ready. Like, that's badass. I also like Zekrom's design. Zekrom's design, I mean, of the three, if I were to argue which one I like the most, I think it is Zekrom's. The Sleek Black is good. It's great. I like his wings, even though they're not the best for flying, really. He looks actually the more combat ready because he actually has arms. Like, he looks like he'd actually be able to fight you. He's also got a little kaiju-ish. I do like the fact he's a little kaiju-ish. I almost said Jewish there, like combined in the kaiju-ish. Oh God, I'm just picturing Godzilla speaking with a little Jewish accent. But yeah, what really kind of was interesting for me when doing Zekrom, Reshiram, and Kyogre is how useful these guys are in combat. And frankly, Reshiram is actually... Zekrom is actually the less useful in combat than Reshiram. Obviously, Reshiram is higher on this list. And I think that's because the dual typing of Electric Dragon doesn't mitigate as many weaknesses for both typings as the Dragon and Fire typing does. Because the Dragon and Fire typing actually mitigates a bit more of the water weakness for Fire, whereas doesn't really do anything for the ground. It's still, he's still no good against ground Pokemon, quite frankly. Especially if you were to go, if you put a Garchomp, same level as Zekrom against the Zekrom, the Garchomp's winning because he's just immune to electric. Whereas there's nothing that's immune to fire, which is why Reshiram got a little bit of an edge. So coming in now at number 8, we got the original water Pokemon. We got the creator of the oceans, Kyogre. Now, when it comes to Ruby and Sapphire, I went Ruby. But that's not to say I didn't appreciate the whale-esque Leviathan creature that is Kyogre. I very much like Kyogre. In fact, him and Groudon, again, had the exact same scoring when I scored them out. But because I preferred Groudon a little bit over Kyogre, I ranked him as such. Which, spoiler, you can tell what my next one is. But I still like this way. This is you can see this is a Pokemon of the ocean. This is supposedly the one that created the oceans, and then they gave it the primal form, which was really pretty cool. It's just a good design. It is, frankly. So ultimately, Kyogre came in at the number. What number am I on? I think I'm on number 8. Yeah, number 8. Whereas the reason I liked Groudon over Kyogre is because not the ground typing. The typing didn't matter to me. It was the design. Like, this is as close, even like with someone like Tyranitar. No, this is as close as we get to a Godzilla in the Pokemon universe. Not necessarily from size perspective. Quite frankly, he's not that tall. He's like 11 feet tall. He's not that big, surprisingly. But he weighs literally a ton. So, but in terms of just the way he looks, the design, this looks like a legendary Pokemon. This is a very Godzilla-esque monster of a Pokemon. The fact that he was ground was interesting. Like, I would have actually, you look at it, you don't see ground, you see fire. I would have thought a ground fire typing. And maybe you could have gotten like a water or electric to summon storms in things along those lines when it comes to primal, or when it comes to Kyogre. You could have gone that route. I would have been 100% okay with that. Fire ground, water thunder, lightning, water electric. I easily could have gone with that. Of course, that would have given Kyogre or Groudon a really strong edge over Kyogre at that point. As it stands, they equal each other out pretty well, surprisingly. Even though water is strong against ground, Groudon's ability actually helps to counter out Kyogre, so they actually make a pretty good mirror pair to each other on equal footing. Coming in now at the number 6, 7? This was number 7. Number 6 is, not Kyurem, sorry. There we go. Reshiram. Now, why did Reshiram, I went with white when I got the games initially. So why does Reshiram outrank Zekrom? Well, I kind of just explained it a little earlier. That's because typing-wise in a combat, and again, going with Legendary and all that stuff, you just have less weaknesses when it comes to Reshiram, and you have more coverage than you do with Zekrom, unfortunately. Sadly, that's kind of what killed a lot of these guys in terms of how they ranked. Not necessarily how bad they did on lore or anything like that, but just how well they actually managed to do in combat. Some of them just weren't able to stack up in terms of actual combat. It sucks, but that's the way it goes. So, now that we got that, we are now into if you'll give me 1 second to just get a couple things set up here. There we go. We're now into, no joke, top 5. And coming at number 5 is Necrozma. Why Necrozma at number 5? Well, yes, there's Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and that definitely plays a bit of a factor that actually Necrozma's true form is this weird psychic light dragon that just absorbs light and is a menace, and is one of the, I didn't play Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, but from everything I'm told, it is one of the hardest fights you will ever play in a Pokemon game. It's a legitimate challenge. But even take out Ultra Necrozma, like the true form. This is a really cool looking. It's made of prisms. It's just all crystal. It's got these badass claws. It floats. It's actually really cool. I always kind of dug this. Now again, in the first game, it's a problem. You just find it. That's the problem. You just find it. In the second game, oh no, he's the big bad in the second game. Literally possessing the other 2 original box arts and just taking over their bodies and then releasing himself. He wants to absorb all the light. That is really badass and really cool. That is the kind of story that makes for a compelling Pokemon game. Honestly, Necrozma is one of the most badass legendaries, I think, even just in this form. And then you go into the final battle, which makes him one of the toughest legendaries there is. So why didn't he rank higher? Like, why isn't he number 1? He's only number 5. Well, a little sore here. I don't think that's like a lymph node or anything. I think that's just overuse of talking and stuff like that. Well, design-wise, there's a couple of Pokemon that rank better design-wise, and there's a couple of Pokemon that just tie better ultimately into the lore of the region. And he's only Psychic in his base form. Yes, he's a Dragon Psychic in his other form, and he has abilities that help, but as it stands, he's a Dragon Psychic, or he's just a Psychic type in this form. So he's limited by that. So coming in now at number 4 is Rayquaza. Rayquaza, a lot of people will oftentimes rank, wow, my voice is starting to go. I've been talking for over an hour. A lot of people oftentimes will rank Rayquaza as one of the, if not the best legendary Pokemon. And indeed, he's one of the best legendaries there. His Mega is sick. His lore, he's the one that comes down to quell the fighting between Groudon and Kyogre. That's pretty awesome. The problem, unfortunately, with Rayquaza is while that is great for lore, he's also great in combat. Like, no joke, he is one of the only legendary who gets a Mega for a reason. While he is great in combat, while he is great, perfect, he's a Chinese dragon aesthetics, all that great, he's still, I get the quelling the 3, but that only happens in Emerald. And then you have to just go and find them. Even in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, you get to climb on them afterwards and go into space and fight Deoxys. But that's it. Emerald, I get the game is based around him, and it helps a bit, but it's still not enough. And unfortunately, again, it was really just lore. He doesn't have enough presence in the actual game for his lore to be well represented. So that's where I had to rank Rayquaza, unfortunately. Number 3. Bronze medal goes to Xerneas. Now, I ranked Yveltal a little bit higher here. But I got Y when I got it. But I'll admit, I initially wanted to go with X when X and Y came out. Because Xerneas is pretty awesome. Like, he's a fairy type. He's this badass crystal stag. As a fairy, recently, when that had just come out, he was a menace on the meta. Obviously, I don't play competitive. I know that. Fairies can change the meta forever. Then they got balanced out, and everything's now pretty balanced. But he's a badass design. He's an elegant design, and he's the Pokemon representation of life. I think of Pokemon representation of life. I think of something vibrant that just exudes life. And these glowing rainbow antlers, there you go. This blue coloration, perfect. Plus, him and Yveltal are integral to the game. They are literally going to be used as weapons of mass destruction to destroy the region. So yeah, integral. They represent the lore of their region perfectly. They are great designed Pokemon in my mind. And right coming up, Yveltal. Yveltal grew on me immediately after I had to go with Y because my sister wanted next. And I'm like, no, that's fine. And then after I'm like, oh no. The Pokemon of Death, this black and red, I've heard some people say the Bacon Raven or something like that. This black and I like how they both look like the X and Y symbol to some degree. I do like that. I think that's a cute little addition there. But no, I love this pose too, because this is the pose you get with him most of the time, where he's in this menacing, like, I'm going to come down and wreak havoc on you. Also, you should know that of their signature moves, Yveltal's is the only one, and who is... should I that real quick? Stop it. Yeah, there we go. Yveltal is the only one who has a offensive actual move, whereas Xerneas is more of a status move. And that's fine, but I'll be honest, if my legendary has a signature move, I'd prefer it to, be a move that does something. So, I'm just going to, stupid. Okay, anyway. Sorry, these guys are, pictures are taking up the screen a bit too much. So, yeah, I love it. He looks like death. He looks like he's going to reap lives in many ways. I also like his shiny, though. I'll admit, the shiny Yeah, it looks a bit more like bacon. I'll admit that. But I think it's a cool inverse on the shiny. I like his lore. I like there's a bit of the Norse mythology there with the stag and the Odin's raven. So I dig on all of that, quite frankly. So that is number 2. Now coming into the worst and the best. Coming in as the worst legendary Pokemon is the Lake Trio from Sinnoh. And to me, it just comes down to the fact that these guys are just unoriginal. We had Mew, we had Celebi, we had Jirachi. We had these little imps. These guys are just psychic. The only one you can even catch regular by itself is the yellow one, who's I think the worst of the 3. I mean, he's cute because he's sleepy, but the only thing they had going for him, even over Heatran, is the fact that they at least have a bit of a presence within the lore of the region. That was about it. That was it. They had a bit more presence because they were used to chain the legendaries. That was it. Unfortunately, these guys are they're not very original. They're not inspiring. Even Heatran's got a better design than them. So, unfortunately, they came in at the bottom. And finally, rounding out, going, an hour and 10 minutes, probably an hour and 13 when it's all said and done. You know it. You know it. You love it. It's your boy, Giratina. Oh, yeah. Now, get out of it. No, this is Giratina Spotlight time. Oh, yeah. And I went with the origin form because, quite frankly, it's more badass. It's just more badass. Giratina is the only... No Pokemon got a perfect score, mind you. But Giratina came the closest. His design, even in his other design, his design is still badass. This almost demonic-looking reptilian ghost dragon. And in here, he's clearly more serpentine. And his wings are clearly more like, almost like puffs of smoke just coming off his back. He's just dangerous looking. Ghost Dragon's a very unique typing, too. Ghost gives it an immunity to normal and fighting. Right off the bat, there's 2 typings just gone. His dragon, he's just, what was his signature move? Phantom Force. Phantom Force, great signature move. His lore, he's essentially Satan. He's essentially Lucifer banished to hell. That's essentially what he was. Now, I don't know if Game Freak when they actually made the Sinnoh trio and Arceus, they had actually intended that Arceus is God, Michael, Gabriel, and then Lucifer. I don't know if they actually intended that, but that's how it came off. People interpreted it, and you know what? I'm okay with that. If he struggles at all, it's because there's no Pokemon that's perfect in a competitive sense. All Pokemon have a weakness of some kind, with the exception of a couple, like Electros actually isn't weak to anything because it has Levitate. So there are exceptions, but most of the time, everyone has a weakness. And still, Dragon Ghost, still weak to Fairy, still weak to Dark. So it's not like he's completely, immune to anything. But ultimately, he's just... And obviously, he had a movie dedicated to him, too, obviously. And he had a game. The big thing is, Platinum, his game. Like Rayquaza, he got Emerald, but he didn't play as big a part as I remember in Emerald as a lot of the other ones did, I think. Like, in their own game. Unfortunately, I think he suffered in his own game. Whereas Giratina, no. He is the main man of his game. He is the de facto of his game. So, I mean, to me, between the lore, the design, particularly the origin form, and the fact that he's just badass in battle, to me, Giratina ultimately won this entire thing. And I wasn't really surprised. I knew it was going to be one of several, and Giratina just happened to be that one. So, we went on for about an hour and 15 minutes. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you lasted that long. I appreciate anyone who did actually last long. And my battery's finally going out. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I do hope you enjoyed yourself. Thanks for watching. My voice starting to go. Talked for over an hour. I'm going to put this guy in the charger, upload this video, and be done for the day. Until then, though, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I got a who would win tomorrow, plus the death battle prediction, assuming they let us know what the next death battle would be. Because I think they hinted at it in one of their, don't know what it's called. Basically, DBX basically where they're just talking. It's basically a show where they're talking about what's going on. They're going on hiatus, coming back in August. I think Beerus is the next opponent that's going to show up in Death Valley. Either that or it's the 1 minute, the DBX short fights. I hope not. I hope they use Beerus in the actual fight. We'll see what happens. Till then, though, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.